Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Inside the Pitch here at the Post-Dispatch. I'm Ben Frederickson alongside Jeff Gordon. Gordon, I've tried to hold out hope. I've tried to say, hey, the Cardinals are playing terribly. Yeah, this season's a disaster. Sure. But look at the National League Central and look how poorly other teams are playing. Well, I'm pretty much on your side now. I think this thing's kaput. I think the Cardinals have to sell off what they can, and they really have to start spinning this thing forward to 2024. Even poor Fredbird has jumped into his, I don't know if this is a promotional giveaway, Fredbird in a casket, but Gordo, you've been covering the Cardinals for a long time. This has to be one of the most disappointing, frustrating, embarrassing seasons the Cardinals have had, because this was not a season where everybody said, okay, this is going to be a down year. Oh, they could have a struggle to win the division. They were heavily expected to win this division, and it's fallen out from beneath them, and it was entirely predictable because they didn't do anything to help their pitching. And it's the pitching, Gordo, that's killing them. They have a top 5 OPS among National League teams. They're top 6 in runs. They are producing offensively, but their pitching, whether it's in the rotation or the bullpen, it's continuing to find ways to lose games.
Yeah, I don't think we all knew that, they could use relief help, sure, another starter. They're probably about 8 pitchers short of being good enough to win the division. That's a
bad division.
Yeah, and that's a lot of pitching to be short, right? So the level of failure is staggering. You know, I've been around some lackluster teams going back to the 90s. They weren't very good. The ownership wasn't very interested. Poor Joe Torre didn't have a lot to work with. Pretty lackluster coming out of the good Whitey Ball years. That was probably the worst I've seen. They've some skip years, some down years after the ownership change. But this was supposed to be a 90-win team, and it starts 10-24. And this is, in the history of the franchise, arguably the single most disappointing campaign when you look at expectations versus results.
Let's run through some numbers. They're 17-25 at home. They're on pace to have the worst home field winning percentage of any team in more than 100 years of Cardinals baseball. They are now 8-18 in one-run games. They have 1 walk-off win compared to 5 walk-off losses. They've blown 27 leads so far this season. Their staff ERA is at 4.69. That's starters and relievers. And I mentioned the numbers offensively. Offensively, they're coming up with enough offense to find ways to win games, but the rotation is where it all starts. A 4.96 ERA for that rotation, Gordo. It's not second guessing. When you and I sat here, how many times this offseason, even going into last season, saying they can't trust this rotation. They need to do more. If you're going to bring back Adam Wainwright, who's now on the injured list after the Cardinals said he was healthy, well, apparently not. Of course he's healthy. They're just trying to find a way to get him back and let him finish this thing a little bit better. We said it, you got to find something to do with this rotation, and they passed, and they crossed their fingers, and they hoped for the best, and that to me is where all of this starts, is a front office that heard calls time and time again to improve the rotation and did nothing to help it. And
they cut corners on the relief corps. There are a lot of good relief pitchers out there that were available for reasonable dollars. Just one example, Aroldis Chapman has a great year, great comeback year. Now he's going to help, I guess, Texas win games after Kansas City moved down from him. So there were a lot of guys that could have helped that would have been affordable. But you look at ownership pulling back spending, uncertainty about local TV, the payroll did not come in at the expected level, at least in the fan expectations. You thought you had enough pitching, maybe you could have added one more. But again, you were so far short. Your pitching has fallen so far short of where it needed to be. So many guys have failed. And individually, how much of that's a domino effect, how much of it's just guys weren't good enough, some combination of the two. But you didn't do everything you could to go into the season at full strength. Things started going bad, and then they really went bad. And what can you say? Now that you're sunk into the worst abyss that the team's had in arguably ever, it's a long road back. It's going to be a long road back.
And it's got to start at this trade deadline.
Right.
You've got to take your pieces that are on short-term contracts or expiring. You've got to move them and try to start building up this pitching depth, because there aren't, unfortunately, a lot of high-level prospects who are close to being ready to help this rotation. So that's got to be the focus of the rest of this season. One more stat before we go, Gordo. 67.4%. That was the preseason, postseason odds for the Cardinals, according to Fangraphs. It's now down to 5.4%. It has fallen 62% before the All-Star break, and this is in a division that, as of today, we're recording this, there's not a single team in this division that is 10 games above 500, not one. And the Cardinals are at the bottom of it. It's hard to to paint it more bluntly than that, it has been a disaster for the Cardinals, and one that is even worse when you take into account how bad the rest of the division has been around them. We'll maybe have some more positive news next time, because we got to start spinning this thing forward, Gordo. We're not going to keep kicking the Cardinals and shoving Fred Bird into his cardboard box here. We're going to try to start looking at what the Cardinals need to do moving forward, and that's going to be the focus of our future videos. But we needed one more Vince session. I wore black. You didn't get the memo. Fred Bird got the memo. We'll find some pieces of what they need to do moving forward starting next week here on Inside Pitch. For Jeff Gordon, I'm Ben Frederickson. We'll talk to you next time.